Natasha is the founder of the Well-Traveled Palate. She's a master trained chef who has been all over the world sharing her culinary experiences. And we're so stoked to cook a St. Patrick's Day Irish feast tonight. So, Natasha, if you wanted to just introduce yourself and we can go ahead and get into it, it'd be so
Yes.
super fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me here today. As Leah mentioned, I am not in my normal kitchen. If you have joined me for, if you maybe you were in the Seattle event that we did, I am not at home. I actually had planned a last minute trip to Hawaii to celebrate my anniversary. And so I am in our Airbnb kitchen cooking today, but I found pretty much everything I needed in the kitchen and in the grocery store. So I think we're going to be A-okay today. So just to give you a little bit of background on who I am and how I came to be here today to talk to you guys about food. So I did not actually grow up as a person who loved cooking. I know a lot of people that's like, they loved cooking since they were a kid. I did not like it. I ran away from the kitchen. I was actually really intimidated by being in the kitchen because my mom and my grandparents, they all cooked amazing and they seemed like they knew how to make it happen just like magic. So it wasn't until I went away to college and I had to feed myself, got tired of eating ramen and goldfish, that I decided to get in the kitchen and start cooking. So I started cooking from there. And then when I graduated from college, I moved to New York City and decided to go to culinary school. Like I had grown such a love for food and the experimentation and playing with flavors. I decided to learn more by going to culinary school. But the thing that really stood out to me when I was living in New York wasn't actually culinary school. It was all the amazing restaurants there in New York City. If anybody's been to New York, you know the food there, you have everything. The whole entire world is in New York City when it comes to food. So that was really what took me away, was like the Malaysian food or Filipino or Brazilian. And so I wanted to learn how to cook those flavors and those foods. So I quit my job, quit the life I had started in New York City, and decided to travel to learn more about food and flavor. So I went to the kitchens of home cooks and chefs in Morocco and Israel and Argentina, and I started to learn from them how to work with foods and flavors and ingredients. And so over the past several years, I've studied in countries all around the world, and you combine that with my own experience and know-how in order to really focus on helping people work with flavors and ingredients and help you to create just a broad spectrum, a wide variety of foods that you can make at home that will make it really fun, easy, and joyful to be in your kitchen cooking as well as eating. So today we're going to be doing an Irish feast in honor of St. Patrick's Day. I decided to bring Ireland into the mix for today. So we're going to be making 2.5 dishes, give or take. So the first thing we're going to be making is colcannon, which is like basically mashed potatoes, Irish style. It's mashed potatoes with a twist. It's really, really delicious. I made this a couple months back for my son. He's 1 year old and he absolutely devoured it. I have a picture of him sitting on the counter with his baby spoon, just digging into the pot, eating it straight out of the pot. So it is a crowd favorite. Then we're also going to be doing steaks. And we're going to be just going over kind of the basic technique for getting steak right, getting a really great steak, seared steak. And then we're going to finish that off with a steak sauce, which is going to be made with a stout, because stouts are the popular beer. If you think of Guinness, that's a stout. Irish beers are, you know, Ireland's known for its stout beers. So we're going to do a stout sauce on top of the steak. So let's just dive right in, since we don't have a lot of time and I want to get a whole bunch done. So first and foremost, I've kind of done some of the prep. So if anybody has, you know, if you're like kind of prepping, you're a little bit behind me because I've already pre-done some of this, I apologize. We have a short time, so I've done a little bit beforehand. So starting off with potatoes, I've already gone ahead and peeled my potatoes, and I had really large russet potatoes, so I chopped these down into thirds just so that they'll cook faster. And I'm going to put these into a pot of water, and I'm just going to cover them up with water and then get them on high heat so that we can soften these. We're trying to tenderize these, so I'm just going to cover them enough with water, and then we'll put these to the side so that they can tenderize. So like I said, those are going on the stovetop, medium-high heat. If there's mishaps, it's going to, you guys will get the live version of this if things go wrong, because like I said, I'm in a foreign kitchen, so it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have fun together. The next thing that we have is our cabbage. So for this dish, traditionally it's made either with Savoy cabbage or it can be made with kale. So if you can't find Savoy cabbage, you could also use kale, which is usually available, or you can also use regular green cabbage. So for the cabbage, all I did was I just shredded this up. So you just need this into small shredded pieces. Here, these are going to cook down. They'll get softened as we cook them, but you just still want to make sure that the pieces are not too large so that it will be easy to eat them, because we're going to mix this in with the mashed potatoes. So at the very end, we don't want the size of the pieces of cabbage to be too large so that they're overwhelming for anybody who's eating the mashed potatoes. And the other piece we have here are our leeks. I haven't chopped these up yet, so we're going to go in with the leeks. And leeks are, if you're not familiar, you haven't cooked with leeks before, these are they're a part of the onion family, and they're a wonderful addition or alternative if you don't like onions, or if you want to kind of add a little bit more depth of flavor. You can try out using leeks. They're very, very similar in terms of the flavor profile to your onion. The thing to know is that if we're going to, for what we're doing, we only want to use this bottom portion of the leek. The upper portion of the leek is not, in terms of the texture and the taste of it, is not going to be something that's going to be very appetizing in this because of the fibrousness of this portion of the leek. So we're just going to focus on this down here because it will tenderize and it'll have that nice soft texture like we would get from an onion. So just using this white portion at the bottom and like the pale greenish area right here, you can use that. But once you get up here to like those thicker leaves, we'll leave those behind. If you make this, I'm gonna tilt my camera. If you do make this at home and you're like, oh, don't want to waste all of this, what's great to do with that is turn that into stock. So you can, if you make vegetable stock or chicken stock, whatever, you can use all of this upper portion, go ahead and throw that into some water, and you can just simmer that for anywhere from 3 to 5 hours, depending on how much stock that you have and how much other items and bones you have in there. If you're making the bone broth, then you will infuse the flavor from the leeks into your stock. So we're going to just thinly slice this up. And one of the things I usually mention when I come on to do just like quick classes like this is always reiterating just a really super basic thing, which is knife skills and how to properly hold your knife, because it is very simple and yet essential for getting great results in the kitchen. So I always like to remind people, because it's not intuitive. It's not necessarily something that anybody ever tells you unless you go to like a cooking class or you are related to somebody who is a chef and has practiced this. So I want to just quickly talk about how to properly hold your knife. So you're holding your knife and you have the blade here and you have the handle. The area where you want to keep your hand at is right up against the blade. So you don't want your hand way back here. And the reason is because you don't have a lot of leverage from way back here. You also don't want your finger placed on the top of the blade, because this will create a lot of strain on your hand as you're trying to apply pressure. So the perfect place is to just pinch that blade on either side. So your thumb will be on one side, your forefinger on the other, pinch that blade nice and tight. And then you want to use this back section of your knife when you're chopping things up, not this section way up here, because again, you lose leverage because all the power is back here right next to your hand. So the best place to use is that back portion of your knife, and you won't have to press as hard or apply as much pressure, which will also mean you're less likely to cut yourself, because the more pressure you're applying, then that means if your finger accidentally was in the way, you're more likely to get a really deep cut. And it might not feel like completely natural the first couple times that you are holding your knife that way. It will take some practice. I run a workshop called the Cooking and Flavor Mastery Academy. And a lot of people were like, this feels unnatural. This feels weird the first time that they did that. So you just have to kind of practice it a little bit and it'll start to feel more and more normal the more that you do it. All right. So we are going to get right into the cooking now. I've got my, oh, actually one more thing. Almost forgot, bacon. So bacon is also going in here. If you don't eat bacon, you can feel free to leave this portion of the recipe out. It's not absolutely essential, it just adds nice flavor. Fat is a key flavor addition for any food that you're eating. So one of the things that you can always do if you're like trying to switch up what it is that you're eating and figure out like, how do I get more variety into my food without, having to make it complicated? You can always switch the fat sources that are in your food. So if you're making scrambled eggs, for instance, instead of cooking them with regular oil or olive oil or butter, you could try cooking them in bacon fat. And it will add a whole lot of flavor. I actually did this I had some leftover lamb fat. And so I tossed the lamb fat as the cooking grease for my scrambled eggs. And my husband came back to me and was like, what did you do to the scrambled eggs today? They were amazing. So just a simple swap of the fat source can add more depth and layers of flavor to any dish. Scrambled eggs is a really great example. I use it all the time because pretty much everyone knows how to make scrambled eggs. So I always refer to scrambled eggs. All right, get this burner hot. I think that's warming up. Perfect. So I'm going to let this warm up a bit, and then we're going to grab our butter. You could also very easily make this dish like vegan if you wanted to. Leave out the butter, get vegan butter. I did this class. I have a private group that I run where every month we go to a new country, and so we did Ireland a couple months ago, and somebody was trying to eat plant-based diet, so they swapped in vegan butter and they left out the bacon, and were able to still enjoy this. So if you are a vegan person or you have a vegan person in your family, you can also adapt this recipe. All right, so we're going to go, and I warmed up my pan over medium-high heat, and I'm going to go in with 2 tablespoons of butter.
Hey, Natasha.
Yeah.
We had a question from PR Banks. What butter are you using currently?
Right now, I grabbed Challenge butter. This is Challenge butter, European style butter. In terms of brand, it doesn't really matter a whole lot to me. I do like European style butter for the fat content. I like a fattier, if I'm going to go with the fat from a butter, I want the fattiness, I want the creaminess. Always, if you're cooking with it, use unsalted butter, because then you have much more control over the salt content of the food, and you're not going to need to gauge how salty is my butter in addition to everything else that you're using. I saw somebody said they use Kerrygold, love that as Irish butter. So I did not find Kerrygold in the store that I was at, but if you have Irish butter, that is perfect. Salted butter is great when you're doing things like, putting butter on toast, because then it adds the flavor. But when you're cooking with it, much better to be able to gauge that or to control that by not having salt in the butter that you're cooking with. All right. So now my butter's melted. I'm going to go in with my bacon, and I'm going to go in with about half or so of my cabbage, about a cup, I would say, of the cabbage. And as soon as that goes in there, you want to hear some sizzle. So if you ever put the food into the pot and you don't hear any sizzle, that means your pan is not hot enough. So you want to take food out, let the pan warm up more. So don't just put the food in there, because otherwise it's just going to be soaking up the fat and you're not going to get the crisp texture that you're looking for. You're usually going to end up with more soggy foods than anything, and soggy really just never is appetizing. So I see Lauren here in the house. Hi, Lauren. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I'm furiously trying to prep all this stuff as going at lightning speed tonight. But yes.
Today is a little bit faster than normal. Lauren is a client of mine. We're going a little bit faster than normal because we have a shortened period. Sometimes we have like a full 45 minutes, an hour and a half. But I'm going a little bit faster today. So hope you guys can keep up with me. But if you have questions, keep them coming at me, because I'll answer questions as much as I can.
And I was inspired by your $30 in steak anecdote. So I spent the money and spent like $30 in steak. So I'm hoping it turns out okay.
Nice.
Hey, Natasha, we had another quick question. I think it was Heather that wanted to know if you could sub like a grilled portobello mushroom for the taste for the steak for the non-meat eaters.
Yeah, you definitely could. Yeah, you can do a grilled portobello would be great. And I'm trying to think of anything else that I might use as other substitutes. I know people have done cauliflower steaks too as a substitute.
Nice.
I'm not plant-based eater, but I have tried. I've tried being a plant-based eater. I think I did like it has like a 22-day challenge or something like that, and I was very proud of myself for doing and sticking with it. So yeah, anybody who does that full time, I commend you, because just like not necessarily the difficulty of eating fruits and vegetables, but it's like when you go out to eat or you're trying to like alter things that you already enjoy, that can definitely be a challenge. All right, so this, I'm just mixing this up. The mixture is gonna go for about 5 minutes or so. What I'm really looking for is I'm trying to get a little bit of color on both the cabbage and the bacon. So a little bit of browning will happen, and that browning that's happening, or caramelization is often referred to, that is the technical term for that is the Maillard reaction. And what's happening there is we're transforming the sugars and the proteins in the food into new molecules that taste really good, in a simple way to explain it. So we create more toasty flavors, nutty flavors. The sugars will help you enhance even more. So if you have any trouble with bitter flavors in food, one of the things that helps a lot to reduce bitterness is adding more caramelization, because it enhances more of those umami flavors and those sweet flavors. All right. Getting some nice color around here. I'll bring this closer to the camera so you guys can take a look here. Getting some nice brown color here on like my cabbage. That's what I'm looking for. And then the bacon is also picking up some color. And it doesn't need to be, you know, a whole lot. Looking to transform texture, softening it, crisping the bacon, as well as transforming flavor, enhancing those flavors through the cooking process. I'm going to go ahead and grab a bowl to put this to the side. Something you might notice with this particular recipe, there's a lot of butter. So this is not diet food, but you could also reduce the butter too, honestly. But butter makes things taste really good. So it's why, you know, French people, Irish people, everyone uses a whole lot of butter, because butter is full of flavor. So I'm going to go back into that hot pan, and I've just added about 3 tablespoons of additional butter. And once that's melted, my leeks are going to go into that pan, into that pot. The next thing I need to have ready to go is my garlic. So let me find my garlic. I'm going to add 2 cloves of garlic. So we have 2 leeks, the whites and pale green part are sliced really thinly. That's going to go in along with 2 cloves of garlic. And grab a different knife. One of the things that helps if you're mincing garlic is to grab a smaller knife. The different kinds of knives that you usually typically would want to have in your kitchen, chef's knife, that's the longer knife that you'll have. PR said bacon still hasn't browned yet. Check how temperature are you working at? I'm on medium high, so if yours isn't browning, might be the temperature. But don't worry, we won't leave you behind. And it doesn't also, like I mentioned, it doesn't have to be completely brown. I just added a little bit of color on there, so it's still a little tender because I don't want it to be too crispy. I have to remember that I have to talk in between cooking. And so what often happens is I talk too much and I cook too little, and so then things burn. What I was mentioning is about our knives. So chef's knife, this is the all-important main knife you'll have in your kitchen. You can also do this style, the santoku knife, and it has more of this sheep's foot shape instead of the point, which is the French style. These are both the same style of knife for the most part. This one, usually this is a Japanese style, has a more fine blade to it, really great for cutting things very, very thinly. So if you see sushi, somebody making sushi, they'll usually have this style of knife because it's great for very, very thin slices. But you can have one or both of these in your kitchen. And then you also want to have your paring knife. This is for small jobs, for precision and accuracy. So that's why it's good to also have a paring knife in your kitchen, because when you're doing things like mincing 1 or 2 pieces of garlic, or you are hulling a strawberry, maybe you're trying to peel something, that's where your paring knife will come in very, very handy, and it makes it a lot easier to do those jobs versus trying to peel something with this big old boy. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more difficult to peel with that. So my meats are cooking very quickly back here. So I'm going to just adjust the camera just really quickly and show you quickly how to mince up this garlic that we have. So I do my garlic when I mince it, when I just have 1 or 2 pieces, the same way that I would slice up an onion. So if you've ever seen the technique where you do multiple slits across the top of the onion, and then you do a horizontal, 1 or 2 horizontal slits into the onion, I do that exact same thing with the garlic in order to mince it. So I just make a few slits, maybe 5 to 7 slits in the garlic, and then I make 2 horizontal cuts into it, and then I will chop down into it, and that will give you wonderful minced garlic. So it's a little bit easier than sometimes doing the rock and chop method. If you only have 1 or 2 pieces of garlic, doing the rock and chop actually, I found, takes longer than doing it this way. So that's why I like this one for small amounts. Great. So now I think these leeks look great. So my leeks, these are fully cooked. They have nice color on them. Like I said, I talk too much, so my stuff gets a little browner than it probably should be, but that's okay. Not burnt, but it's a little brown. So we're going to go ahead and add the garlic into the pot. This is 2 cloves of garlic going in. The key thing to know with garlic is it does not take long at all to cook. It cooks really, really fast, which means it can burn really, really fast. And burnt garlic is really bitter, and it imparts a bitter flavor to your entire meal. So garlic only needs to cook for 30 to 60 seconds, honestly, before it is ready to come off the heat, or it's for you to move on to the next step to add more ingredients so that the garlic is not going to be in contact with too much heat for too long. So this is pretty much, these are pretty much good. I'm actually going to take it off, so since I'm talking, we don't overdo it with the garlic. All right, and so now we're going to add some more cabbage. We're going to do another cup of cabbage. And we're going to just go ahead and let that, we're going to stir this up until those wilt down. How are we doing, everybody? Checking in, see people, some people in the kitchen. Kate, Susan, I see you guys cooking. That's so awesome. Oh, hi, Brooke, you're with us again. So good to see you. Hello, Claire and Emma. Hi, Elizabeth, Janet, and Dan. Oh, we have so many amazing people here. I did scoop out the kitchen beforehand before I picked my Airbnb. I just saw that one pop up. I did. I had to make sure it was going to be a kitchen that I could put on camera and wouldn't be I'm embarrassed for you guys to see. Awesome. Okay, so while this is going, I'm going to keep an eye on it, but I'm going to move into the next step. So I'm just looking for this to wilt down and tenderize, so that will take a moment. So I'm grabbing my steak. So the cut that I chose for this, I believe I was picked New York. Yeah, I did New York, a New York strip steak. And ribeye also works well. You can do like porterhouse, T-bone steaks. Any of those will work really well. I recommend something from the loin or mid region of the animal if you're going to be cooking a steak and you want a really tender, luscious steak. I mean, you can even go to filet mignon if you have the desire and the budget. You can go to filet mignon. And the reason that we want those center cuts of meat is because they are very, very tender. The middle of the animal does not get a whole lot of movement and exercise. If you think along, if you like picture a cow or a lamb or something and it's walking by, the very center of the animal where its ribs are, where its back is, that doesn't move a whole lot. So the meat in that section stays really, really soft and tender. And so when you're cooking that steak, you're gonna have that meat that's juicy and melts in your mouth. On the other hand, if you look at the back of the animal or the front of the animal, the shoulders or the haunches, those are where the joints are. So those are when it's moving, walking side to side, they're getting a bunch of movement. And so the muscle tissue is constricting. It is going to be much tougher. And so if you buy steaks from like the haunches from the round, or you buy like, what are they called? Top sirloin. Sirloins usually are going to be tougher meat because they're from the further back in the animal. And so if you really want tenderness, that is to focus on that center region of the animal. But if you want more beefy flavor, if you like that strong beefy flavor, then do go with those parts of the animal that are getting more movement, because the more movement they get, the stronger that beefy, or if it's piggy flavor, or goat, or whatever other kind of animal it is that you're eating, you'll get more flavor from those regions. Same thing if you think about like chicken breast versus chicken thighs. The thighs, everyone says they're so much more flavorful. That's because the thighs are moving around, they're getting more movement. So you're gonna get more flavor from them. So that's the kind of the overview on your steak. So let's get into this. In terms of cooking a steak, what to know, first and foremost, like I said, is the cut of steak. That will determine a lot about the texture and flavor that you're going to get. The next thing that we can do to enhance the taste is through searing the steak and cooking the steak. So one of the best ways to cook steak is by applying very little manipulation to it, just searing it off, adding a wonderful crust to that outside. That same thing we talked about, that Maillard reaction, that creates a wonderful flavor on the outside of your steak. So don't have to do a whole lot to do that. The first thing we want to do is I'm going to take my steak out before it needs to be cooked. So about 30 minutes or so before you're going to cook your steak, you'd want to take that out. And somebody said I can use some alcohol. If you guys have porters in the house, I guess you can grab your beer, and just if you give up and give in, you can just drink the beer from here on out. You don't have to keep cooking. I think my cabbage is ready to come off the heat. So I'm just gonna put this to the side, and these are both gonna get mixed into our mashed potatoes. So you're again just looking to wilt that cabbage so it's nice and tender when we mix it in. So those are both gonna go. So take the steak out about half an hour before. That will help with making sure that you get a really nice sear on your steak, and that the temperature is not like you don't have multiple temperatures throughout the meat. More of the entire piece of steak will be at the same temperature. So the first thing we want to do is pat our steak dry. So in order to get the perfect sear on anything that you're cooking, there is a 4-step method. I just call it my PUR method. And the first letter P is for pat it dry. So get some paper towels, no matter what it is you're cooking, chicken, shrimp, steak, even if you're doing mushrooms or something like that. If you're going to sear something and you want to get the outside nice and crunchy, crispy, that golden brown color, get rid of all the liquid that's on the surface. And that's because the water on the surface can only get to 212 degrees. In order for us to get that caramelized color, it has to get to about 324 degrees. So got to get rid of all the water first. You get slowed down if you have a bunch of water sitting on the surface of your food, which means you slow down that searing process, more likely to overcook the food by the time it's ready with the sear. So food is patted dry. I'm going to go ahead and add some salt to this, and you can season it with salt up to half an hour beforehand and allow the salt to sit there and kind of penetrate deeper into your steak. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my pan hot. This is not my ideal pan for the job. I will be 100% honest. This is what was available here. I did consider going out and buying a new pan, but I thought, you know, I'll see if I can make it work. Hopefully I can make it work with the pan that I have here available to me. So traditionally I would like a stainless steel pan, or a cast iron skillet would also be really good for this particular job. But what I had for me is, I think this is some kind of non-stick type of pan. So we'll see how well it does with this particular job. But traditionally I would prefer those other kinds of materials because they can get really hot and hold on to the heat. And that's what we need in order to get the best sear. So the P-U-R-R, the U stands for use a hot and heavy bottomed pan, which is usually like a cast iron skillet. So I'm going to add in some oil to my pan. I'm going to do probably maybe a teaspoon, teaspoon or so of oil. And let that warm up. My pan should still already be pretty hot, so it shouldn't take very long for that to be ready. All right, so pat the food dry, use a hot and heavy bottomed pan. R, the next one is resist the urge to move the food. So once this food goes in there, I want to leave it alone. Don't start shifting it or flipping it. You want to let it sit there. You're gonna let it sit there for about, I would say, probably about 3 or 4 minutes, depending on the doneness that you like for your steak. So after 3 or 4 minutes, we will flip it, and then we'll cook the second side. And depending on how much you like your steak done, you can take the temperature and decide if it will come off or if you want to leave it on a little bit longer. There we go. So always have to hear that sizzle. Somebody said, have I used Himalayan sea salt? Yes, I've used Himalayan sea salt. I love Himalayan sea salt. What I'm using today is Pacific brand sea salt. It's a Hawaiian sea salt. So I just thought I'd use something local. Himalayan sea salt's great. Kosher sea salt is great. Any kind of large flake is really good. It will hold to the food really well. It will also, one thing to know is that all salt has different salinity levels. So it's helpful to pick a kind of salt that you like and stick with it as much as possible, because then you'll get really comfortable and confident around how salty that salt is and how much you need when you're cooking different things. So at home, I usually will use like Diamond, the Diamond brand kosher salt. I'll also sometimes use what is the other brand? Morton's. But once you have a brand that you like, get comfortable with it, I'd say stick with it as much as possible so that you will get really confident around how much you need, and you don't have to guess and sometimes have too much. Oh, thanks, Leah. Been about 2 minutes, I'd say. So I just gave it a check to see how it's searing. It actually is doing a pretty good job searing. I wasn't sure working with this pan, but looks like it's pretty good. And while we're at it, I guess I should check these potatoes because they're probably tender enough at this point. Just about there. Mine still need a little bit more time, so go ahead and check your potatoes. They might be ready. If they are pork tender, you can go ahead and drain them in a colander. If not, like mine, if they need a little bit longer, we can let them keep going for a little bit. All right, so this steak I have here. I'm going to go ahead and give this a flip and give you guys a look at how the other side is looking. So that looks really perfect. Oops, put it in the camera. That's really perfect. That's what I'm looking for in terms of color. I want that beautiful brown. It's almost like on the verge of being burnt, but not quite. You want that really strong, deep brown color. You want to see the fat starting to render off of the steak. And you should be able to all just kind of smell it as well. So all of that are good signs that we have a nice sear on our steak. I'm gonna flip that over and cook the second side. The other thing that's super key and important for cooking steak is having a great meat thermometer. Anytime you're cooking meat of any kind in your house, if you eat meat at home, I highly encourage you to get a good meat thermometer, because it's the only way to really ensure that you consistently get good results. So if you've ever had the experience of dry meat, overcooked meat, or undercooked meat, maybe you had to like took it off and then you bit into it and you're like, oh, that's not quite ready yet. Anybody else? Raise your hand if that's you, because that's happened to me quite a few times. You're like, oh, dang it, I need to put that back on and cook it a little bit longer. You don't want salmonella poisoning or anything like that. So the best thing to do is to get a meat thermometer. It will save you a lot of guesswork when it comes to cooking, because you never have to figure out, is it ready based on your eyeballs or your intuition, or maybe trying to touch the meat. You're using a thermometer, it's 100% accurate every single time. You'll know exactly how far along the food is. And if you have people in your home who want different levels of doneness, somebody likes rare, somebody likes medium, then you can cook everyone's meat perfectly to their desired doneness. So if you're going for like usually the typical desire for like best flavor and texture is medium rare for a steak like this. So anywhere between 130 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't remember what that is in Celsius off the top of my head. I apologize. Maybe somebody can look it up really quick and drop it in the chat and let you guys know what that is in Celsius, just in case anybody is in Celsius. And so I saw somebody mentioned finishing a steak in the microwave. I don't know who said that, but I think that sounds hilarious. And I'm not sure what the results, how were the results? Did they taste any good? Let me know if microwave steak tastes any good. So not awful, okay. So I think the steak is ready to come on. I actually don't have my meat thermometer with me, so I'm being a terrible teacher because I forgot my good meat thermometer at home. I should have packed it with me, but I will do as I say, not as I do, because I don't have my meat thermometer with me. But based on me and my experience, I'm pretty certain this steak is where I want it. But 100% getting a meat thermometer is the best way to always test it. So I keep my meat thermometer every time I'm cooking anything. I always test it with the meat thermometer in order to ensure that I have the correct temperature for my meat. And if there's anything that I encourage people to invest in and to get that they might not have in their kitchen normally, is to get a good meat thermometer. And when I say a good meat thermometer, that means avoid those dial ones that have like pictures of like animals on it or something like that. The dial ones, they hardly ever work. They're not reliable. They have to be calibrated. They're a big headache, honestly, and I just don't recommend them. If you can, I would say get an instant read digital thermometer. At a minimum, get a digital one. If you can, get an instant read digital thermometer. They don't have to be super pricey. There are some that are quite affordable. I've seen some on Amazon for like $15 to $20. On the higher end, they can go up to like $100 for a restaurant quality one. But get one of those. It will make cooking so much easier, and your results will be consistently really, really good if you are cooking meat. So that's my huge focal point. I always kind of go on a tangent about meat thermometers because I think it's so important, because people get really intimidated around cooking meat and they will not buy that $30 steak that like Lauren was talking about because they're like, I don't want to mess it up. And it feels like there's kind of this intimidation factor of like, how do I get it right? And I felt that as well. And by cooking with the meat thermometer, it takes all of that pressure out, because I just have to poke it and I'll know exactly how done it is. And then I don't have to worry about undercooking and all of that mess. So that is why I encourage you to get a meat thermometer. So once your steak comes off, the last step of PER is R, rest the meat. So anytime you cook meat, you want to make sure you rest it, whether it's a steak, it's a piece of chicken, it's a whole turkey. Always resting the meat allows all of that moisture that's inside of it to return back into the fibers of the muscles. And so you'll get a nice juicy bite in the food, and the juices won't run out of the food right when you cut into it. So make sure you rest the meat. For something like a steak, 5 minutes is plenty. For a larger thing like a whole chicken or a whole turkey, you might need 20, 25, 30 minutes, depending on the size of that. But resting it will again keep that moisture inside the mussels instead of having them run out onto the plate. Okay, let's see. Last thing we have here before the potatoes are done is we're going to put together our sauce. So I'm gonna grab some butter and my flour. And we're gonna butter and flour is a really great thickening agent. If you've ever heard of making like a roux, this is a kind of similar kind of process. It will help to thicken anything. So you can turn really anything into a sauce as long as you thicken it up and it's gonna be like viscous enough to stick to the surface of your food, then it becomes a sauce. So anything can be a sauce really, including stout beer. So what do we have here? I'm going to be mixing together my butter. How much butter do I need? I don't remember. A tablespoon. I need a tablespoon of butter. So I've got a tablespoon of butter that's going to go into my bowl. And then I also need some flour. I'm going to grab my measuring spoon. And we're going to do two teaspoons. I apologize. I think I said tablespoons. 2 teaspoons of flour. And I'm going to just put this into a bowl together. I'm going to mash this up together with a fork. And so this will be our thickening agent. If you don't eat butter or flour for that matter, you could also use cornstarch as a replacement as a thickening agent. And I would probably use about a teaspoon of cornstarch, maybe a teaspoon and a half, and you just mix that with a teaspoon of cold water. And then you'll use that the same way that you would do like what I'm doing with the butter and the flour. That is another option. Going to get this kind of mashed in together. Tapioca or arrowroot, yeah, those would probably work well as well for this application. Yeah, I don't know if I've used tapioca. I've definitely used arrowroot before, but tapioca should be fine. Tapioca is actually, well, no, I've used yucca. I was going to say, have I used tapioca? But no, yucca is a really great, or cassava, it also might be called manioc, is a really great flour replacement because it's has pretty much like the neutral flavor as regular wheat flour. All right, so I'm gonna wipe out this pan. If you're making a pan sauce, which is basically a sauce that you make in the pan after you've cooked something, just wanna make sure you remove any of the excess oil and bits that are on the bottom of the pan so that those do not make your sauce greasy or bitter. And we're going to go in with our garlic. So I need 1 more clove of garlic. And I'm just going to press this. So it just needs to be smashed. So just take the side of your knife and just smash it. And oh, oil, need oil. We're gonna add a teaspoon of oil along with the garlic. And like I said earlier, garlic does not need very long on the heat. We just want that on there. You want it to basically, once you can smell the garlic, that's enough time of cooking with it. So as soon as you can smell that garlic, we'll go ahead and move on to adding our broth to the pot. See lots of movement in the kitchens. You guys look good. How's the steaks looking? Did anybody make a steak? Bring it up to the camera. I want to see. Let me know if you made a steak.
I finished my potatoes, Natasha. Can I show them?
Yes, yes. Are your potatoes ready?
Sorry, I pre-prepped. I cheated everyone.
Oh no, it's totally fine. I love that. I love to actually get to see. Have you tasted it?
Yes, they're
How is
bomb.
it?
They're so good. I told
Yay.
I told my family, I'm like, compliments of me. Yeah, thank you, Emma. Trying to plate it as well, you know, get them little green onions on the top there.
Yeah,
So.
I know. It looks so profesh. I love that. All right, so I've just added in my broth. So half a cup of beef broth went into the same pan with the garlic. And I'm gonna just get my beer ready as well, because that's gonna go in next. So you just wanna bring it to a boil. It should happen pretty quickly because the pan is already hot. So I'm getting my stout ready. That's gonna go in next. And add in my stout. Also, our brown sugar will also go in. And so I did half a cup of beef broth, half a cup of the stout. Now I'm doing a tablespoon of brown sugar, dark brown sugar. Light brown sugar would work too if you have light brown and you don't have dark. So that goes in. Brown sugar does have a different flavor though than white sugar. So if you're like, is it the same? It's possible to replace it with white sugar. You have a little bit of molasses you can mix in. I know if you don't have dark brown sugar, are you likely to have molasses? Maybe, maybe not. But if you do have molasses around, mixing in a little bit of molasses will help replicate the flavor of brown sugar. And then we have our soy sauce. I actually have tamari here. This is the gluten-free option. If you don't want to do gluten, you can use tamari, which is also fermented, very similar flavor to soy sauce, but gluten-free. So we're going to go in with a tablespoon of the tamari. And our Dijon mustard. And there'll be 3 teaspoons of Dijon. And I'll give this a whisk. Make sure everything is mixed together. And go ahead and add in that butter and flour mixture that we made earlier. And you should almost immediately start to experience some thickening happen as soon as that butter flour mixture goes in. I'll bring this up closer to the camera so you guys can get a look. Ooh, if there wasn't so much steam, go ahead and grab a spoon so you can kind of see that as it was completely liquidy before, and now you can see it's a little bit more viscous, thicker. So I'm going to let this cook a little bit longer, and the more that it reduces, the thicker that it's going to get. I would not add any salt before this, because as food reduces, the salt concentration would get higher. So we want to season with salt at the very end, just to make sure it's not too salty. It probably won't need much salt at the end. All right. So last thing is these potatoes. Oh, these are done. I'm going to go ahead and drain off my potatoes. Hopefully your guys' potatoes are also done. In there. And I'm just gonna grab a masher. Can you believe my my Airbnb had a masher? It's pretty cool. So I'm just gonna mash these up. And then the ingredients that are going to go in there, we have heavy whipping cream is going to go in, as well as the scallion. So I'm going to slice up the scallion, and then we'll add in the things that we sauteed earlier, the cabbage mixtures. Now you can do this when you mash this, you can do it with a hand masher, you can do it with the mill, you can do it with a electric hand mixer. All of those will do. I would just say try to leave a little bit of texture in your mashed potatoes so that they have a little bit of meatiness to them. Don't get rid of all the lumps, leave a little bit of lumps. So, oops, excuse me, we're gonna do half a cup of cream. And then I have a scallion here. Where did I just made it? Oh, there it is. I came to Hawaii and these are the longest scallions I've ever seen in my life. Have you guys ever seen a scallion that's this long before? Maybe if you grew your own. I think people started doing that during the pandemic. I heard everyone was like taking old green onions and you could like grow a green onion plant from that in your home. Did anybody try doing that?
I did.
Who was that? Wait, right?
That was me, Leah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. It's easy, but they grow back a lot thinner and just, you know, like a fake green onion. But it works. You literally just put it in water for like a few days.
I have to try it. I saw somebody said in Singapore, this is what the scallions look like, which makes sense. They probably have a similar climate to here in Hawaii. So that's what you get when you have wonderful tropical climate. So I'm just going to chop up these scallions to go in. Other thing that I love to do, actually, I should have just did it while I was here. I like to use my kitchen shears to do this job. That is the other essential kitchen item that I always tell people to grab is kitchen shears. They make life really easy. Somebody said, "Oh, you can regrow your own romaine." That's really cool. I need to grow more stuff. I'm terrible at growing things. I kill everything. I'm hoping my plants will survive when I come back home after this trip. So my scallions are going to go in. That's maybe for 2021. That will be my goal to cultivate my green thumb. All right. So the scallions have gone into the mixture, and then we're going to go ahead and add those things we made earlier. So this here is the cabbage and leek mixture. And then we also have the bacon and cabbage mixture. And give this a good stir. And there we have our lovely Irish coal cannon. And I would say make sure to taste and add more salt as needed. It may, depending on how salty your bacon is and those kinds of things will affect. So I would say here completely salt to taste. I won't give you an exact amount of salt that you need because everyone's mixture will be a little bit different in terms of how much salt that you need. So start by adding a teaspoon or so. First taste it, then add a teaspoon if it needs more salt, and then taste it again and continue tasting it and adding small amounts until you have it perfectly seasoned. And it could be less than a teaspoon if you taste and you're like, it doesn't quite need a whole teaspoon, maybe it only needs a quarter of a teaspoon, then you can continue adding. So we have our Irish coal cannon completed. We have our steak over here that we've finished. I'm going to transfer this to a not drippings covered plate. And we have our lovely, need a spoon. Where's my spoons? There we go. We have our lovely stout sauce as well. So, that off. Oh, doesn't need salt at all. It's so good. Oh man, very tasty. So that is everything we're making today. So I know we went really, really fast, but thank you guys for getting in the kitchen with me and trying to keep up. Happy to take any last questions. Anybody have any questions on anything else? If you're behind me and you need me to repeat anything, let me know.
I dropped your info in the chat as well, Natasha.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, let me tell you guys, if you enjoyed joining me for this class where you can do more stuff like this with me. So I have a group on Facebook. It's called Travel and Feast, where I show up every single week and do cooking lessons. We talk about how to work with flavors and foods from all around the world. We travel to new places each week. So we've done, we've done Ethiopia, we've done Lebanon, we've gone to Nigeria, we've talked about American soul food, we've talked about Argentine food, Moroccan, we've gone all over. So I do that every week. I'm in there, I do a weekly cooking show called Tasty Kitchen, that is completely complimentary to join the group. You can come on in there. The link should be in the chat, I believe. You can come over. It's again called Travel and Feast. And you can join me there. And also, if you loved this and you're like, would be interested in doing a consult with me to kind of get more of your personal questions answered. Like if you're like, wow, I really love this, but something didn't make sense to me, or I want to get really good at this particular specific thing, you are welcome to get in touch with me for a private consultation where I can give you some answer questions, give you some recommendations on what would be a really great fit for you based on the flavors you like to eat and the things you like to work with, what you have in your kitchen right now. And in order to do that, you can do one of two things. You can send me a text, and to text me, you can text my text flavor, FLAVOR, to 66866, or you can just find me on Facebook, or you can visit me on which my Facebook group, you'll know that it's me because it's my Facebook group, Travel and Feast, or you can send me an email to Natasha at the Well-Traveled Palate. And those are how you can get in touch with me if you want more cooking in your life. If you want to do this more frequently and you want to cook some amazing food, I would love to help you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. You are a speed demon. I was like, wow, are we really going to do this in an hour? It's so impressive. I mean, I would expect nothing less from a master trained chef. So
thank you. I was trying to make sure we kept it in the time, and also give you guys some of the skills that are behind this. So it's not just follow this recipe, but understanding why you're doing what you're doing in the kitchen. And maybe you followed other recipes and weren't quite sure why you did what you did in those instances. And I wanted to make sure to explain all of that. So if you are behind, you have some questions or anything like that, I'm happy to stay on for a couple more minutes. I see people are in their kitchens busy putting things together, which is so awesome. I see Susan and Allison in the kitchen together. Is this mom and daughter? It is awesome. I love it. I love it. And PR Banks, I've seen her scurrying around the kitchen. She's making it happen. I love to see it. Brooke, I saw your message. You're still on the steak, which is awesome. Linda said she loves learning the science behind cooking. Yes, this is one of the parts of it that's super fascinating to me. And what I like is like once you learn that part of it, it makes like improvising in the kitchen a little bit more tangible and easier to do. It makes the process of like when something goes wrong, like understanding why it went wrong, a lot easier because you can kind of dissect it a little bit more. You are so welcome. A biochemist. Of course you love the science, Brooke. Yeah. So cool. Love seeing, and thank you guys all for like coming and joining me and hanging out in the kitchen on this